you're guilty.
Right, yeah.
Right. And what this does is it keeps people from having recourse and civil,
like suing the
punitive
state
damages.
or something.
Yes,
right?
all that. You're basically the state saying you can go home. We know you didn't do it, but on paper it's going to look like you did it. And that comes from a 1970 Supreme Court case of Henry C. Alford versus North Carolina. And that had actually, what the question was, is this type of plea legal? And the court deemed it was.
Okay.
So yeah, so basically it shit on them in the end.
Yeah, of course.
They ruined their life. They didn't let them out during all these appeals. And then in the end, they made them basically say they're guilty.
Right.
And give up all their rights to sue the states and all that.
Well, just wrapping up here, I have a list of some satanic murders. So if you're interested in true crime, which clearly you are, you're listening to us, and you want to do further research on this topic and investigate some of these murders for yourself, of course, there's the Ricky Queso crime that I talked about earlier.
Yeah, I'm going to read all about that one.
Nikolai Oglobiak.
I'm never going to remember how to spell that one.
Well, to appease Satan, a group of young Russian kids decided that they had to step up their game and started doing these human sacrifices. And they were led by this choir boy, Nikolai Oglobiak. I can't speak Russian. But he basically lured 4 teenage friends into the woods. Once they were in the woods, the Satanists stabbed each victim 666 times. Then they partially ate the victims. And they ended up being arrested after human bones were found near this guy's house. And they told police that Satan was going to help them to avoid responsibility, that they had made all these sacrifices. They had tried to turn to God, but he didn't do anything for them, so they prayed to Satan and things got better.
Okay.
Then, of course, we talked about the black metal church burnings. If you want to go check that out. These happened, of course, in Norway in the early 90s. There were something like 50 acts of arson committed by black metal musicians and black metal fans from 92 to 96.
Yeah.
But one of the most tragic losses of this was the 11th century national landmark, the Fantoft Stave Church.
How old was that church?
11th century.
11th century.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Another one that you can look into if you're interested in these Norwegian black metal crimes, the band Gorgoroth was one of the most satanic bands in history. The singer Gall worshipped Satan, committed a lot of violent acts in his name. He was actually sentenced to a year in prison in 2002 for violently assaulting and torturing a stranger at a party. The stranger apparently made a move to leave the party before Gall allowed him to go. So Gall hit the man, tied him to a chair, tortured him, collected the guy's blood in a cup, saying he was going to sacrifice him and drink his blood. And this had been a pattern. He'd been convicted for similar crimes before and even after. And every time he went to court, showed up wearing satanic symbols. And you've got the Beasts of Satan. They were actually an Italian satanic cult in the late 90s.
Really?
So this is
we
not
should have talked about them.
Hysterical in the U.S. alone. I mean, this is worldwide. You've got this thing happening in Europe, in Norway. You've got this happening in Italy. They were basically a group of friends that loved black metal. And in 1998, the cult members murdered 2 of their friends and allegedly danced on their graves. And then the cult killed again 6 years later, and eventually in 2004, the ringleaders were arrested. Everybody went to trial. They ended up getting some lengthy prison sentences. Elise Pauler is another case. She was a teenager with a successful life. She was brutally murdered, and her corpse was desecrated by members of Hatred, which is this California metal band. 3 of the band members lured Pauler to their home, killed her, performed these satanic rituals with her body. And her family sued the band Slayer for supposedly inspiring the killers, but the suit was thrown out of court.
Yeah. So, wow, there's a lot there. I guess you could probably just go on and on and on about that.
Well, we talked about Richard Ramirez. There's also the Ripper Crew, which was 4 serial killers between 81 and 82 that stalked and murdered prostitutes in Chicago.
The Ripper Crew?
The Ripper Crew. There is a guy, Rodrigo Orias Gallardo. He was in the black metal band from Chile that committed some heinous satanic murders. Just a crazy story, so that's one to check out. We've got Miranda Barber. She and her husband were known as the Craigslist Killers, and they apparently pledged their allegiance to Satan, and all of these deaths supposedly were part of that. So, something to look into if you want to find out more about satanic murders.
Wow. Yeah, I'll go back and listen to some of that. There's a few I'm going to pick away from that myself.
Yeah, some pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, so I guess we've carried on a little bit, but we just had a lot to say.
We did. It's all pretty interesting.
Yeah, a lot to say about Satanic Panic.
Yeah,
and it's
fascinating.
Consequences are, to this day, can be, now these types of things go live on the web nowadays.
Well, they do,
right?
And you think about the hysteria, and you're like, how could something like this just sweep a nation and people become so enthralled? But it's easy to see. I mean, and this took place in the 80s and 90s, but if you look back, think of the witch hysteria, the Salem witch trials.
I know.
And that was in the 1600s, and it's essentially kind of the same thing.
It's actually the exact same thing. I'm kind of glad you brought it, because you listen about the witch trials and you're like, how in the world could this happen? But it is actually, they've come to call this type of thing the witch trials, Satanic Panic, and many other instances in history. It is mass hysteria.
Yep.
Which is a phenomenon that transmits collective illusions of threat, or albeit real or imagined, and it rips through a population. Doesn't matter the size of the population.
Well, I think it all boils down to the fear of the unknown, and
yes.
People are automatically going to be scared of what they don't understand.
And people are going to do what their neighbors are doing.
And if you're different, if you stand out, if you believe something differently from everybody else, and you're a nonconformist, you're an easy target.
Yep. If you are different than the other even 10 people, and they're scared, and they think that doing something to you can keep them safe, you're done.
Yeah, or it's going to protect them.
Right.
Like, oh, well, I don't want this attention focused on me, so let's shift it to the weird guy. Let's call out the weirdo.
Yeah, and that is often fueled by rumor and unknown fears.
It's true.
So there you go. That can happen, and it'll happen again.
I'm sure.
So over something. So guys, I think you guys are cooler than that. You won't take part of mass hysteria, because I know I won't, because I never believe what everybody else believes.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to this bonus episode here on Mountain Murders, the Satanic Panic.
Yes.